So are we ready for spring or what? What a beautiful day here in Rossmoor. Flowers are coming out, grass is green. It's a good time to sit out on the patio with some new food service options maybe. So thank you all for coming out and joining us here today to learn a little bit about what we have been up to with our food and beverage study. This is the initial study, and we are here today with Danny Bindas and Mandy DeLucia. I knew I would mess it up, but they are with Synergy Food Consulting, and they have been conducting a study with us for quite a while now. And today we're going to unveil some of their findings, some of their research that they have done with you in an interactive process through our surveys, through small group discussions, and through some research on the general area and about this community in general. We really are looking at what are the possibilities for additional food service in Rossmoor. What is the capacity? What is the interest? What is the community's ability to sustain additional food service? What are those opportunities? What do they look like? So our consultants here are going to review a lot of their findings, share with you some of those possibilities, some of those visions, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end about what's next. This study very specifically was not about Creekside Grill. It was not focused on pros and cons of Creekside Grill, but rather what are the other opportunities in Rossmoor, looking at a more holistic approach to the campus and food service available everywhere in Rossmoor. At the end, we'll talk about next steps, which will take an approach and look at Creekside as part of that overall food service delivery here. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Mandy and Danny, and they're going to go through all of the information that they've found. You all have the opportunity with a little information card. If you'd like to ask a question that you haven't already written down, write that down and we'll collect that from you so we can try and answer those at the end as well. Right.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So again, my name is Danny. This is Mandy. We're going to be with you for the next 90 minutes or so. But just so you know, we are a restaurant consulting company. We've been in business. We're actually in our 36 years, which is sort of hard to imagine if you're in my position. But it's been a great ride. So I tell you that because my business partner and I are both chefs by trade. And we've been working on our tagline for many years was innovation and efficiency. So we bring that to this study and to this work that we're doing because we want to see how can we innovate food service at Rossmoor globally, but then how can we efficiently execute that? So there's a lot of moving parts. It's sort of an interesting puzzle to satisfy your needs and operators' needs, budgets, costs, to try to bring all of this together to have a whole bunch of options for you folks to utilize as we go forward, right? So we're going to take just a real quick trip down memory lane here to kind of tell you what our objectives were from the outset, which was really to study your facility, study your community. Mandy and I took several trips up here to learn, observe, and we want to find out what we really think is feasible in terms of food service as a complement to Creekside, not a competitor of, okay? So how can it all sort of meld together and be balanced? We want to obviously make sure we address resident needs, and we've been very conscious to try to receive as much input as we possibly could, through surveys, which many of you participated in small groups, and interviews by a whole bunch of people. So bringing that into effect. And then the result of all of that information and research and data was to put together what you're going to see today, which is our vision for what we think food service should be in Rossmoor. Okay? So some of the key considerations, as you see up here, is we want a sustainable, environmentally as a part of that also, but a food service program that can last not only today, tomorrow, a year from now, but 5 years from now, to meet your current need state, but also your future. New residents coming in are going to have new desires, new tastes, new things that they may want. So we want to be sensitive to that. We want to try to create a program that will be feasible financially. And we're going to talk about resident participation at some point because we want it to be sustainable. We want it to be for you folks to be able to use it in many different occasions to generate enough revenue for the community, for the operator, and everybody else so it can last in the long term, okay? We want to, and we did evaluate all of your facilities currently, which we're going to talk a little bit more to say, are there areas currently that could be used as part of this food service program, master plan, if you will? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. And then obviously try to do our best in giving you the best judgment on operator needs, what sort of cost, what sort of budget considerations are there, you know, construction, remodel, whatever that happens to be. All basically to get to, as I say, what do we want this to be when it grows up, right? So that's all things that we have taken into consideration to get where we want to get to. So we went through a pretty arduous process, again, researching the needs. And here again, we did questionnaires and surveys within the community. We interviewed a whole lot of board members, the golf pro, and anybody that was willing to talk to us, quite honestly, to learn everything we could about what do you want that we can potentially fulfill here at Rossmoor. And we tried to establish some food service parameters. Mandy's going to go through some of the high-level results of all of these surveys and information here in just a few minutes. I don't want to steal any of her thunder, right? We did a series of small group discussions. The goal was sort of to tell you where we were and get feedback that would result in where we are today, which is what you're going to hear. So all of that information sort of coming together, all right? We have not yet, and it's the next thing we're going to do after today, is talk about what are the facility and what are the operational requirements in order to make this master plan work. And I think when I say master plan, the idea is what all do we want it to do, and at some point you have to decide what pieces can be implemented that will fit within that master plan over the long term, okay? And then we're going to come up with our final reporting and some financial information on what a sustainable framework can look like in the future. The other part of this, which was, you know, again, as I said, touring all of your potential facilities. You'll see some of the photos that we took to try to, again, say, are there places or are there areas that we could use as part of the master plan? I mean, our current thinking right now is that there isn't one area that could satisfy all of the needs. Hopefully when we finish and you see everything we're asking it to do, you'll agree that there has to be something bigger and better to be able to do everything we want it to do. So but that's going to come later, okay? The other thing we did was we took a small group of people on a competitive market tour to restaurants in the area. And, you know, it's a lot of hard work that somebody had to do. We basically ate for a day at like 6 or 7 different restaurants around town. And there you go. Yeah, she was part of that tour. And the goal was to understand what is the market currently, where is there a potential void in the market, what is the menu offering, the value perception, healthy options, not healthy options, what does the decor look like, and just information gathering and brainstorming, all again designed to ultimately get to what we're going to recommend for Rossmoor. And we went to Sideboard as an example, we went to Tutu's and Social Bird, among other places, okay?
So as Danny said, you guys have a great food scene out here. So anything that is added inside the gates has to compete with that and has to be compelling enough for people to want to go there regularly. Hopefully many of you took the survey. We put a survey together with about 20 questions, and we had more than 1,500 people complete the survey either online or on paper, which was incredible. So thank you for participating. The questions on the survey were really designed to help us better understand dining behavior, preferences from the community, as well as some basic demographic information about those who took the survey. We were hoping to find the biggest opportunities for expanded food service inside the gates. So what times of day are underserved? What locations do people gravitate towards for activities? And what do you really need when it comes to food service inside the gates? As we went through that and we pulled the survey together, we got a lot of great information. Some of you might have read this already in the Rossmoor News, but it came as no surprise to us that 70% of residents ate out more than once a week. So either 1, 2, or multiple times a week outside the gates. And that shows that people are wanting and willing to spend money eating outside the home. So lunch was the most popular meal to eat out, followed by dinner and then breakfast, and then coffee tea as its own occasion was another survey standout. When we asked people what are the biggest factors in decision-making around eating out, people said craveable food, cleanliness was top of the list, as well as excellent service from service staff. And there was in a couple of different ways, we were told that people preferred fresh, organic, and healthy choices. But those were also equally balanced with traditional American favorites and ethnic flavors. But only 5% of respondents said that they were satisfied with current on-property dining options for all of their needs. When we asked what F&B options would suit needs inside the gates, more than 60% said quick service or bakery cafe. And that makes sense, right? We have a full service restaurant on site right now. What people said they really needed was a quick option for some refreshment, for some caffeine, or for a quick grab and go item to go on their way. Other questions we asked helped highlight preferences like flavors and day parts. And we had a spectrum of answers coming back from that. But in addition to coffee and pastries, people listed things like sandwiches, fresh seafood, pizza, burgers, hot dogs, and salads. So, you ask 1,500 people a question about what they like to eat, and there's 1,500 different answers. But what came through across all sections of the survey was that Rossmoor is a very social place, and that people want to use for food service and are currently using food service to create social connections. More than 40% of people answered that they dine out primarily to meet with friends or family. So having a place to do that and having the right place to do that, the right format, whether it was table size, whether it was accommodations for their group, whether it was a dietary preference that was accommodated, we know that eating together is important for you guys. And that might seem obvious, but when you start to think about expanded food service, it shapes it. So it adds weight to creating a social space for connections rather than just adding vending or adding a food delivery service without a social element. We asked an open-ended question. So most of the questions on the survey were multiple choice, but we asked people, what is the single food or beverage availability that would influence you to dine on property more often? And 15% said they wouldn't change anything. But 85%, so more than 1,100 people gave us suggestions. Generally, they fell into some buckets, which you can kind of see here. So, buckets like cost or day part, or some people asked for a specific restaurant to be brought in the gates. Sometimes it was a specific item. But again, in a group of 10,000 people, there's a wide range of wishes in the list for additional food service. And our mandate with this project is to find the sweet spot for adding service in a sustainable and broadly appealing way. So from the survey, we put together some preliminary ideas about food service at Rossmore. Without getting too specific about where and how, we presented some general ideas about how food service might be expanded inside the gates to serve the greatest number of residents in the greatest number of ways. And we presented those ideas to small groups. And I see some of you from the small groups here today, so thank you so much for coming. You want me to keep going?
Is that me?
What?
Go ahead, I'll talk about it.
Okay.
So what this represents is if you took all of the things based on the surveys that we found where people said these are things that they would like to have, so, need, wants, desires, right? And so where these overlaps are where you would consider to be opportunities, okay? Obviously, residents are first and the biggest circle, but where residents prefer our golfers are there opportunities to provide some food service for golfers at the golf course or before you golf, after you golf, or whatever. Catering, there's a lot of catering here and throughout the campus. So could this master plan incorporate, catering opportunities as well? Social clubs, another. Friends and family. And something that I think we're going to talk about a lot is rather than going out of the community to visit your friends or family, can't they come here and capture those dollars within the community versus somewhere else? So a lot of these things we're going to talk about are going to be opportunities to keep people on site. And, in the restaurant business, one of the things we always say is we want to try to capture as many dollars as we can in as many ways as we can because that helps revenue, profitability, costs, and a whole bunch of things. So that's a big part of this as well. And then, are there staff considerations of how do we take care of the staff on this whole program as well? And again, all of this and all of these determinations determine what is the master plan, which then tells you how much space, what kind of space, where, and a whole bunch of things begin to come together. All right?
So we tend to say that the sweet spot for developing food service is in the overlap of the needs. So if we address resident needs in the largest circle, but we know that catering and social clubs have certain food service needs, that, as Danny mentioned, golfers and people who work on campus have certain needs. If we can create a food service program that satisfies as many people in that overlap as possible, then it's a win-win for the community and for the operator. So 650 survey takers opted in. There was a question on the survey saying, would you like to be participating in a next step? We followed up with those people with some questions designed to create a balanced group. We tried to adjust for, I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. And tried to adjust for age, gender, the type of activities that people did, sports, social clubs, spending habits, and then also what mutuals they lived in. We really wanted to have a cross-section of the community to hear directly from residents to kind of dial in some of our thinking, to expand upon what we'd learned so far in the survey, and to hear directly from people what challenges they had when eating out, what they need, what they want and expect when they go out to eat, and as well as their current dining habits. We asked participants to share their perspectives, but we also asked them to recognize that they were representing the community as a whole, to think about their friends, family, and neighbors as they spoke with us. And first of all, they did a great job. The small groups did a great job doing that. And it really, I think, there were some conversations between people where they had different perspectives or were coming at it from opposite sides of an issue, and everybody really saw each other's perspectives. So we discussed preliminary thinking with these groups, and we heard a lot about the history of food service at Rossmore. So we heard about coffee that had been in the Redwood Room. We heard about vending machines that had been available that were no longer on site. And so it gave people a chance to kind of talk through some of the things that had worked and hadn't worked in the past, which was super helpful for us. We spoke with about 10 to 12 residents in 4 groups over the course of 2 days. And ultimately, the goal was to have have a voice from the community weigh in at a preliminary stage on some of our thinking to shape where we are today. Okay, key takeaways. Social spaces, not a surprise. Residents really want casual spots that they can gather informally. We heard that there were people who are still working that don't have time to be involved in some of the social clubs or take advantage of some of the sports groups, who still want to meet their neighbors and would love to do that in a casual food service environment. We heard from other people who are in lots of clubs but say, I just want to sit with my friend over coffee for a couple of hours and I don't want to feel rushed to give up the table. Convenience. So we know you guys are busy. We heard about how many things you do in a day, and that there's high demand for grab and go, obviously for caffeine or even decaf, but for a coffee shop experience, and quick meals near activities. We heard that for some golfers that there's not an easy choice for refreshment, rehydrating or a quick, even a protein bar or something on their way out. So convenience to support your busy lives. We heard about accessibility. People in the small groups had, hearing challenges or mobility challenges, some kind of sensory needs, and we heard a lot about parking being an issue at many of the most popular buildings. We heard people say, I really need something that fits my fixed budget if I want to use it regularly. And then we heard some people say, hey, I want a premium dining experience. I'm willing to pay the price that is being charged if the environment is great and the food is high quality. And we heard many times that catering is a strong demand, both for kind of big social events, big private events, but even just a dinner party at someone's house, something more casual. So carry-out trays, family packs, something that makes it really easy for you guys to live your active lives.
So then how do we leverage these needs? And what we're trying to demonstrate here is finding the right balance between resident needs, flexibility, and putting together a list of opportunities that can be utilized when you're here against the needs of the community, against the needs of an operator that can successfully operate the food service program with great service, great quality, great people, with enough revenue to make it sustainable and make it profitable. Because at the end of the day, whoever's going to run it is going to be here to make a profit, and if they don't, then it can be a problem. So finding that balance is going to be really, really critical. So in our opinion, benefits of the community, a better experience overall, better opportunities, better variety, and variety meaning not just the type of food. We heard there's a great need desire for more Asian food or more Italian food. So finding that balance, but also variety in terms of price point. So I can, depending on my budget, I can spend a little bit, I can spend more, I can mix it up through the course of the day. And as Mandy said, social engagement, gathering space, events, activities, has to make financial sense for both the community, but also the resident and the operator. And then can this become a competitive advantage for people that want to potentially move into Rossmore, and also for the people that are here to potentially increase the value of their homes, okay? So obviously with every opportunity, potentially there comes a challenge, right? So I just wanted to highlight some of these things that, again, all have to be taken into consideration. Finding the right operating partner that can successfully operate food service. I believe someone that has an entrepreneurial spirit that can see a vision of wanting to grow food service to satisfy your needs, which means you're happy, they're happy, everybody's happy, right? Making sure, and one of the tricks and one of the challenges is going to be, and why we have to be sensitive to all of these different variables and opportunities, is for you folks to use it. Because obviously if you don't use it, we don't have revenue, which means we have a food service program that's not going to become successful. So it's finding, again, that balance of everybody will be attracted to something, somewhere, at some point in time during the day, okay? And then obviously cost, budget, build-out costs. Unfortunately today, everything costs a lot more. COVID was not kind to equipment and building costs. Right now, all of people are selling eggs by the each because you can't afford to buy a dozen. So supply chain is still recovering and will continue to be volatile for a period of time. So all things that need to be considered, okay?
So one of the kind of great things about this project is that because you have a community, a diverse community, but a cohesive community, you can customize the food service program based on your needs. So we're doing this legwork now to understand what those needs are, but ultimately the goal is to build a program that really works for the community as a whole. So a social hub that's multi-purpose, that's completely tailored for you. So what we heard, and what I've said probably more than once now, is that there are many ways to be involved and active and social at Rossmoor in very organized ways, very planned ways. But residents crave a space where they can have just casual encounters, bump into neighbors, and over food and beverage, a place where they can linger without worrying about how long they've been there, but also where they can get light refreshments at an affordable price with ample seating and comfortable seating. Something that becomes central to the fabric of life here for everybody, whether you play pickleball or not. Multi-purpose. So while Creekside was not part of our mandate, Creekside is a full-service restaurant with bar. When we heard all of the different needs that people have here at Rossmoor, we thought, okay, what we need is something that's multi-purpose. It has to do a lot of work. It has to be kind of a workhorse for the community. So the diverse needs for coffee, grab and go, convenient takeout, but also some level of service for people who might need assistance at different stages, might need help carrying their food to their table, but even just a casual place to meet, whether or not you buy anything or you get a water. So something that has built-in flexibility with a multi-purpose facility and a strategy for accomplishing those different goals. The idea is that one facility could offer breakfast, but also offer a happy hour with the right design and operation strategy, making it the heart of the community by adding a convenient option for busy residents that's centrally located, so you can stop by throughout the day for different needs. So it's no secret, Danny's touched on it many times, that restaurants are a challenge to operate. There's the high cost of goods, labor shortages, together with finding the right people and holding on to them, the staff, can make it very difficult for food service operators to prosper. You might not know this, but in fact, on average, restaurants clear only 10% profit on their revenue. Ted, don't argue with me. But for any food service to work inside the gates, residents have to use it regularly in order for it to be sustainable. But the best way to ensure that guests use it regularly is to design it specifically for the needs of the community. So we heard from residents that they struggle with reading menus in low lighting, or that they have a hard time hearing conversations in noisy restaurants, or that tables and patios aren't set up for people with mobility issues. And we heard that people need affordable convenience, but also something to trade up to, like a nice place to go for a date night, in a premium space that feels more contemporary. So building a food service program with very specific target audience in mind means that your unique needs as a community can be built into the guest experience and the facility right from the start.
So program elements were, as we might affectionately call, the circle of life in food service, okay? So you have this circle of all of these opportunities. So you have dine-in, grab and go, retail. Somebody submitted a question about, well, can there be a retail place to get snacks or maybe some ingredients to take home and cook with? Kiosks, and again, we talked about flexibility and portability, so you could have a kiosk in an area for a golf tournament and then move that kiosk to the bocce ball course because you're playing bocce ball in the afternoon, as an example. We heard a lot of desire for delivery, so delivery to your home if you're entertaining guests, which I think would be a really interesting concept. And then catering and events, and then dine-in. So let me just paint a picture real quick. If I was the operator, my ideal food service facility or food service opportunity here would be my golfers are going to pick up a coffee or a water and a little pastry before they play golf. So now you have that one sales channel, and that's a revenue stream. Then after 9 holes, they're going to come in, they're going to grab a snack, and they're going to get more to drink, so that's 2. Then they're going to go back out and play the back 9, and they're going to come back to a cafe, they're going to have lunch, and they're going to talk about how badly they played amongst each other, right? So there's 4. And then they say, well, it's 4 o'clock, let's just hang out for happy hour, and let's have some drinks. So there's 5, okay? Then you say, well, it's been a really fun day, I've had one too many, I think I'm going to get some food to take home. So in one day, I potentially attracted you to spend money with me 6 times, okay? So again, revenue building, but it's also designed to be at your convenience when you want it, how you want it. And so all of these elements play into that whole everything that we can possibly do to help you as residents, but also create a successful operation financially. So here's our vision of what we think it can be. So number 1, an all-day counter service concept. Again, to Mandy's point, a lot of desire for coffee, a place to sit, a place to socialize, a place to have grab and go, a place to have cocktails. So it's a multi-purpose entity that satisfies a lot of needs from morning until nighttime. And you could have entertainment on a patio if it was outside. So it can really focus and be a lot of things to whatever you want it to be as one of the residents.
Danny, I'm sorry. I just want to add, I know we've talked a lot about revenue streams for the operator, and it might feel like, well, what does that mean for me? But we heard many people say, we used to have coffee and sandwiches in the Redwood room, and we don't have that anymore. And the reality is that for an operator to make that really profitable is hard. It's limited. It's not, the business opportunity is so small there that it's hard to keep it going. So if we don't create a program that makes somebody really committed to running it well and to keeping you guys happy, then over the long term, it's just not sustainable. So I just wanted to break in with that. Sorry, Danny.
No problem. Number 2, diversity. And again, we discussed diversity of menu, multi-ethnic, traditional, healthy, gluten-free was mentioned as the desire and a potential need, which is true. Very popular in today's restaurant world are vegetable-forward meals, versus red meat or proteins, interesting beverages, non-alcoholic cocktails. So having all of those things, mixing that in with seasonal specialties, which gives you advantages for freshness and also pricing, and again, healthy choices and that sort of thing. And then I think right-sized portions to fit your needs. And, potentially could be some dietary things thrown in there if you needed a diet plan for home. So again, this whole idea of being diverse with global flavors based on what we heard from you folks, I think would be really, really important, okay? Walk-up window, again, speaking to convenience. If you had a mobile app that you could pre-order and you could walk up to a window, pick up your coffee, pick up your salad or whatever you needed, that would be really cool, I think. And people love convenience and speed at this point if you're on a timing to get somewhere that you need to get to or get on the golf course or whatever you're planning on doing. Number 4, a lot of requests for outdoor seating, outdoor patio. Have a coffee on the patio with your friends, lounge on the patio after a round of golf, a happy hour on the patio, entertainment, potentially a food truck that could be positioned near the patio. So I think everybody, Jeff talked about great weather today, right? So why not use the outdoors when you can? It's perfect, right? So having that opportunity in a very multi-day part scenario would be very positive, right? So I said earlier, mobile ordering and delivery. Mobile apps, very popular today. Home delivery, and again, in particular, as new residents come in, that's sort of how they lived. My kids, they order stuff all the time, right? So being able to have that capability to make it as convenient and easy for you folks to use the facility at home with friends, people from the outside, again, creating all of those sales channels and all of those opportunities. Okay.
I just want to say that the survey showed that relatively few people were currently using delivery. But when we got into the small groups and had one-on-one conversations with people, we heard that there were a couple of reasons for that. One, by the time it got here through the gate and to your finding your house, all the way up the hill, that food was cold or wasn't, great quality. We heard some people talk about safety concerns. So the idea of an internal delivery program that was being sent from a central kitchen within the gates where your food comes hot, where the delivery guy is on an e-bike, so there's not a lot of drama there, and where it's a known entity, felt like it was a really attractive proposition.
And again, I think to be successful, I think maximum portability. So again, the idea of having these non-fixed, multi-use carts where you can offer coffee, pastries out of this vehicle. You convert it to, beer, wine, and alcohol. It could be a quick grab-and-go snack scenario. It could be any number of things that you position where it is needed to the benefit of the resident, to the benefit of the operator. And I think if you found that there was a constant need for something in a place consistently, we talked about shipping containers. They're a very popular, pretty inexpensive way to have food service semi-permanently on site. And then the beautiful thing about shipping containers, if it doesn't work, you just put it on a trailer and you take it somewhere else, right? So it's not a fixed facility. So that could be an option by the bocce ball courts, as an example, if there was enough volume there to justify having someone there staffing continuously. Okay.
So the thought with the mobile carts would be that rather than, what I understand is that all of your current spaces are used and programmed all the time. That there's, social clubs that use them, that there's private events that are being held in these spaces. So when we're thinking about it, it's okay, well, how could we implement food service in a cost-effective way that's extremely flexible, but doesn't take a long time or an enormous amount of planning and cost to implement. And so this is just an idea. As we looked at that sort of circle of revenue streams or circle of ideas or almost like a hub and spoke for the food service, if we have a central kitchen area that could provide pre-made sandwiches, the coffee prep, and bottled beverages to these outposts at different places, it's a way to implement a broader food service program without having to do a huge construction project.
Yeah, and having the production space to service that, take care of them, clean them. Again, that's why it's a challenge now to say this could go in one of your existing locations, because it's just not enough to accomplish all the things we want to accomplish. So a real quick story in this regard, we did work for a client in El Salvador about 5 years ago, and everybody familiar with what a tuk-tuk is? Yeah. So they took a tuk-tuk, right? They painted it with their colors. They were a fried chicken concept. They put feathers, like on the top of this thing, and they would drive it. It was electric. They would drive it a mile or two from one of their locations, and all they sold was fried chicken and beverages, and the restaurant nearest serviced it. So it was very portable. They could move it anywhere they wanted to around the city of San Salvador. And so the idea here again of very flexible, very mobile, very multi-purpose, and it was an ingenious idea. And then there were, that restaurant got all the sales credit from the tuk-tuk, so it was just another sales channel that helped make them more and more successful, right?
So it was like an ice cream shop, but for chicken?
Something like that, for chicken, yes. I actually have a picture of a motorcycle driver with his own personal things in a backpack on his chest, and then another one on his back that had the chicken in it, riding a motorcycle through San Salvador to service the tuk-tuk. It's insane the things they do down there, but hey, it worked, right? So then number 7, and lastly, retail grab and go. There was some interest expressed to, again, pick up food for home, snacks, beverages, maybe some raw materials. If you have inventory in the kitchen that could be available for retail. And we saw this at Tutu, and they do a really nice job of utilizing what they use on their menu, selling at retail, cross-merchandising. And the other genius of that is they don't need as much storage space in the back because it's out in front, right? And then people can take advantage of it or not, right? So being able to have that opportunity for you guys would be, and hopefully it's at a better price because the operators are buying it at a better price than you would buy it at a grocery store, theoretically. Okay. All right, so Mandy is going to bring it home.
Okay, so we showed you a lot of different ideas today. These are all possibilities, okay? So we're kind of going through the feasibility of it, and we're presenting these ideas to you, hopefully to get some insight as to whether or not this feels right. But before we got there, I just wanted to kind of break down what we call day part drivers. So it might look like, okay, there's a lot of stuff happening there, but hopefully by this point you've seen that we're considering all of the different residents and their needs and the different kind of groups of people that live within and work within the community. Then there's the customizing it for your community, and then there's thinking about it operationally and financially, so all these parts that come together. But at the end of the day, these are the sort of what we call day part drivers. So obviously there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know what that is. I don't have to talk about that. But when we think about what a need state is, so for example, you might wake up at 6 and want to meet your friend for a walk around the golf course. Well, I can get a coffee and a water or a smoothie to go. I can get breakfast to sit on site. We heard from many people that breakfast was a need within the gates, but also maybe grab and go for later. I'll pick up a salad for my lunch. Lunch, we heard that people don't always want to get in their car and go outside the gates to grab lunch. That activities, sports, and commitments have inside the gates drive people to look for something quick. And in fact, this happened to me today. We had a couple meetings, and then I knew I had to be up here at 1, and there was kind of no quick spot for me to even get a Diet Coke, which I love. But so, people need an easy spot to refuel, something with flexible to-go options, or a quick place to sit and enjoy a meal that you can have right on site, or a casual place to meet up with friends. We heard that, in addition to food service, we heard that people enjoy food truck evenings and organized dinner events outside. In addition to Creekside, we're thinking about a new or expanded food program, allowing people to skip the dishes with takeout or to linger outside, even picnic style. Picnic packs could be another kind of idea for the retail area. But also communal experiences, so trivia nights, themed dinners, even meal replacement packs. So, if you have the right, I was thinking of tutus where they've got, sort of pieces of meals to go. They have salad, they have proteins that are prepped. Are there things that could be available in a retail environment that make it really easy for you to make a dinner at home? And then what's really missing at Rossmore is the quick refuel snack option, something, refreshing or caffeinated, but even going back to retail, so, snack bars or fruit cups. So something that helps people keep going, or to be indulgent. We heard a lot about people wanting desserts, pastries, ice cream, or sweet treats as a between activity snack, but also like a happy hour kind of wind down. So all of that would kind of go into the snack category. And then catering, which we've touched on before. So when we're thinking about the program holistically, these are all the different kind of day parts and need states that went into that. And Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you for next steps.
Thank you all very much
thanks
for
very
listening
much for
to
listening.
us. Appreciate it.
Hey. So thank you, Danny and Mandy, for that wonderful overview of all of the opportunities and information that you have uncovered during this research project. One of the things that I think is incredibly valuable and really special about Rossmore is, with the leadership of the board, the mutuals, and the vision and push by the residents, this community continues to evolve. It continues to add new resources, new opportunities, new amenities, new programs for the benefit of the residents, to keep it fresh, to keep it interesting. Food service definitely is one of those areas of opportunity that we need to look at. What we showed, or what Danny and Mandy showed from this first study, is that there's certainly capacity. There's interest, there's capacity, there's ability to support additional food service opportunities for the residents in Rossmore. The next phase really is, we know we have an existing restaurant facility here in Rossmore. We also know, as you heard from them during the presentation, is that there are some limitations and challenges within the community on other areas where food service or a catering kitchen or a full service kitchen is available. So how do we bring all of this together in looking at our existing resource, the restaurant at Creekside, and looking at other opportunities and develop a holistic food service program that incorporates both. The lease for Creekside expires at the end of this year, so we will be looking at what does that look like moving forward? How do we incorporate that? How do we get proposals from an operator that is interested in both kinds of service, could provide service to the entire community in a variety of ways? I'm not saying that the existing restaurant or operator is not part of that plan. They may be. They certainly could provide proposals. But we want to look at what are the opportunities for everything in one approach. So we'll be doing that over the next several months as part of the next phase of this study process. At this point, we have some questions that came in, and if you still have a yellow form that you would like to provide, just hold it up and we'll collect those from you and try and answer some of the questions here.
Hello. I have a question for you. I have a few written questions, so I'll address those while Ted and Kelsey are collecting other ones. So in your presentation, you discussed that an ideal partner would be somebody that's entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. So a question came in, have commercial food providers such as Sodexo been considered? So what would happen with a commercial provider as it pertains to this type of vision?
I think part of the RFP development would be, the RFP is going to be the RFP. You can certainly request a proposal from a Sodexo, a Guggenheim, or some other contract feeder as part of the overall mix. So, I certainly would not discount it. I would take a look at it as, part of the overall search, if you will, to find the best operator that's going to do the best job that they can for you, affordably, obviously.
But just to build on what Danny's saying, with a company like Sodexo, and we've got Mary Hurt here who could tell us more about that. Waterford had a relationship with Guggenheimer, which is a contract management. I don't know if everybody knows what Sodexo is, but it's basically like at an airport or at a campus. It's a company that provides food service on a contract basis. It's certainly something that could be looked at by the community, but typically it requires a minimum commitment. You have to pay that amount whether people are using it or not, and then you have to renegotiate the contract. So at this point, I don't know that would be something we'd recommend. It was something that we talked about early on, but just to say that's, we could certainly talk about it further, but just wanting to be clear about what that is.
Yeah, I think in an ideal scenario, at least one person's opinion, finding a really good local operator that cares about the community, not just Rossmore, but Walnut Creek and that area, who has a really strong entrepreneurial spirit and sees a vision of the opportunity. And I truly believe there is huge opportunity here if everything was planned properly. In my mind, that would be one of the best scenarios that you could possibly have. All right.
Okay, I'm going to give one to Jeff. Who's going to fund this, essentially? It says, who's going to fund the foundation? But I believe it's the service, correct?
They want to form a foundation here to study or support. Somebody coming in here, I'm David Mancini, I was a consultant.
So it's really hard for anybody else to hear. I think what the focus of the question, you can give me a heads up or no, is how would something, do I talk too loud? No. Sorry. I think the focus of this is how would this be funded? If there is capital improvements in terms of facilities, how would that be funded? Is this something that may impact our coupon, either pro or con? Many of you may be aware or may not be aware, there is a lease associated with Creekside. Creekside pays a monthly lease. That all helps lower your coupon, whether you eat there or not. So there would have to be a partnership with whoever the operator is. There may be some capital improvements. There may be opportunities to structure a lease or an agreement, a partnership in a variety of ways But as Danny talked about numerous times, this has to be something that is viable for an operator to continue to provide service. Most of that comes from fees or a structured agreement. Likely it's not something, though, that would impact individual residents' coupon, at least in terms of adding to it. It may help overall cost of operating.
Okay. I have another one for you from some of the write-ins. So there were a couple of residents that wrote in, and there are certain sites that they really believe this would be a really great place to have some type of food service, and they're suggesting like Stanley Dollar because it has this beautiful patio, or the Redwood Room because it kind of has that cafe setup. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about what goes into selecting the best site for food service?
Yeah, the most important part about what goes into the site, which is why we did our presentation today, and again, as I always say, what is this going to be when it grows up? What are all the things that this location and this amount of space need to accomplish? So if you want to do delivery, logistics of delivery require space. If you're going to have portable kiosks, that requires a certain amount of space. And once everybody agrees of what the need is, then you find the space, you begin to work on design and that sort of thing. So also important is, how do you get deliveries from vendors? So you have to have a reasonable ingress, egress for trucks and all that sort of thing. If you're going to do delivery, how does all that work in terms of the physical space? You want to have an outdoor patio, you have to have the layout set up where you have indoor dining, outdoor dining, enough kitchen space for storage. Obviously, parking becomes very important because a lot of restaurants fail because they just don't have enough parking, right? So marrying all of those different things together to get you to the ideal location. And I personally think here also sort of centrally located, so it's easier for most people to get to. And if it is, you feel too far away, you still have delivery and you have some other options. So generally, those would be the things that you need to look for to find the optimal space, again, to the benefit of the residents and the benefit of the operator and logistics and tactical ways that you're going to run this thing.
And just to build on what Danny's saying, almost the first thing that we did was take a tour of the existing kitchen facilities. And so you guys probably know this, but a number of them sort of have, household kitchen equipment in them, household ovens or stovetops. The few commercial kitchens that you do have, including the one here at the Event Center, are designed to be finishing kitchens, meaning that caterers can come in with prepped food, heat and plate and serve. They're not really designed as a restaurant kitchen with an enormous amount of storage, right? So a big walk-in cooler or big dry storage and storage for all the packaging and all of the different ingredients that you need to make food. So right now as it stands, there's not one location that's like, this is the one, you can just turn it around and go. Anything is going to have to be thought about carefully in terms of the equipment and the use.
Yeah, and just to touch on, again, I think, not sure what's going to ultimately happen to Creekside, but it could be that whatever this facility is also helps support Creekside in terms of production, because we understand, we have not seen it, the Creekside kitchen is very small. So a way to maybe enhance the menu and the offerings at Creekside would be to get some support from another kitchen somewhere where they can make sausage, dressings, or whatever, and basically get it to Creekside. So it could be another
some of
potential
the
need.
opportunities you talked about were kiosk type things or grab and go, things that probably could happen sooner than later.
Right.
But then there's also within the study talking about more of a long-term approach where you may not see everything happen all at once, but something that we need to plan for in our master thinking in
Right.
terms of what could come next, right?
Yeah, I think what's critical, and again, use the phrase master plan a lot, is what is the food program that you want? What's the master plan on how to get there? And then how could you implement that in pieces over time so that you see progress, you're adding some things, and we talked a little bit earlier, maybe all you did was build a production kitchen somewhere that could manage delivery or could manage takeout or could help support Creekside. And maybe if that's all you did, that would be a huge change to the opportunities you would have to add mobile carts or add coffee or add delivery or add more catering. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but if you don't plan for it in the beginning, you end up paying a lot as you go along, because now you have to redo a bunch of things in order to get where you want to get to. So the master plan is really a critical element of what you need to get to, which is why we're here today.
I want to kind of segue to a question that came in about why not, we had several questions about food trucks. Why not just bring food trucks instead of doing this major overhaul? They don't want to throw cost into this. And just so you know, food trucks actually do cost us money to bring here because it's a volume thing, it's capacity. Usually they have limited menus. And so there are some trucks which do well, which we're no longer paying, like the lobster truck. Any fans in the room? But there are other ones, they come and they try, and if they don't meet minimum sales, we actually are obligated to pay for them. So for the interim, we'll probably be looking at some things like this, particularly as it comes to trying to figure out a way to deliver coffee, whether it's a kiosk somewhere. But for a long-term solution, they're really not built for that. Now, it doesn't mean that if we have a partner, that couldn't be one of the functions that they provide, because again, they're going to have a different type of a economy of scale by operating here in the valley.
Right.
So then there were a couple of comments about Creekside and the concept that it is and the potential to change it. And then, oh my God, if we do change it and close it down, there goes the restaurant for a while. So can you talk a little bit about what happens when those changes, should something like that happen in our community?
Yeah, and I think in the search for finding whoever is going to run all of this, they should be able to have some participation in ultimately what could possibly happen to Creekside. Again, we were not involved at all in Creekside, so to say we think it should be this would be unfair because we haven't really spent a lot of time studying it. But you will go through a transition, potentially, not knowing who's going to end up being the operator. And, you know, we've done a lot of restaurant remodels over the years. Let's just say Creekside, you're going to do a remodel, freshen it, and change menus, whatever happens, okay? And we've done these without ever closing the restaurant. There's a lot of pre-planning that happens, some pre-construction. You know, they work overnight. So there's ways to make changes pretty impactfully without necessarily closing the restaurant or mitigating the amount of time that the restaurant could be closed. You know, if it were to happen in January, you know, if all the stars aligned and you found somebody pretty quickly to be your operating partner, January traditionally is a very slow time of year in the restaurant business. So that would be a great time if you had to shut the facility down for a period of time, right? So I was telling them a story earlier very quickly. I had one experience in my career many years ago. I was 21. And I worked for a Hallmark Cards restaurant subsidiary in Kansas City, Missouri. And they created a restaurant company to run all these restaurant operations. So at midnight, it changed from them, an outside contracting company, being the operator, to us. So we showed up at like 6 in the morning, ready to go to work, open the restaurants. We walked into a table about as big as that round out there that was just covered with this huge mound of keys, right? None of them were labeled. So all we did for like 2 days was walk around trying to figure out what keys went to all of the different, because this had like 6 different cafes, a commissary kitchen, a butcher shop, centralized storage. So needless to say, it was a nightmare. So make the transition as smoothly as possible. I guarantee you it will make your life significantly easier, okay?
Okay. So there were some questions about the small group makeup. And so how many people participated in them? And then I'm going to just add into this because it talks about how you kind of made the selection to interview different people with stakeholders. So basically, how many people were in the small groups? Did they represent different communities of interest? And did we have any input, speaking on behalf of clubs?
So we had, as I mentioned, there were about 1,500 people who took the survey. On the survey, there were 2 questions at the end saying, would you like to participate in future steps of this project? We had about 650 people say yes. And when they said yes, then they gave us their email. Of those 650 people, we emailed all of them it wasn't a survey, it was a kind of a questionnaire about their activities. So were they golfers? Were they in clubs? How long had they lived here? What mutual were they in? How, was budget a concern when they dined out? So those were the kind of questions that were on that questionnaire. Of the 650 people that we sent that to, we had probably about 300 people fill it out. We went through and created lists of 25 people, 4 groups of 25 based on that, trying to have cross-representation. So people who were heavily involved in social clubs, people who were not at all involved in social clubs, people who had lived here for 15 years, people who had lived here for 2 years. Of those groups of 25, we emailed all of them with the dates and said, these are the 2 dates and the times that we're meeting. And so we had probably 15 people or so say, yes, I'm available. So we kind of, from 650, came down to about 60 people. So 4 groups of 15. But then on the day, some people were sick, some people didn't show up or said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. So, there was, I think at the end of the day, the actual attendance, we were probably about a dozen. There are some people in this room that were in those groups. They were great, so thank you for participating. But that was really how we did it. So we definitely had people who were, president of their social clubs and people who were golfers, people who, really had the spectrum of financial situation as well. And people who were married, people who were single. We really tried to create mixed groups. So not just, rather than having one group that was all golfers, we really tried to have mixed groups to replicate what it's really like to live here, all right? And we also, I don't think we could create totally balanced gender groups because the respondents skewed female, but we tried our best to create mixed groups of gender as well.
Yeah. And just to say, we had some rowdy ones and we had some quiet ones. If you were a rowdy one, you know who you are, right? I just want to make sure we get that out there. Okay.
So just, I'm trying to theme things which are very similar so the answer can kind of flow. So I'm looking at 3 things at once here. So there's questions basically about like short-term lease, long-term lease. And I think we've been talking about short-term solutions. Mm-hmm. But kind of the next phase is developing like this RFP, where we're really looking for a partner into that. And because some of the questions now about, to do any of this stuff, it's really excessive cost. Can you talk a little bit about a partner and what you were saying about finding something entrepreneurial and how sometimes these partnership agreements are structured to help with the cost?
Rather than a lease where you're paying money for a fixed space for a period of time, we think the best approach is to find the right organization or the right person, and you say, okay, and let's assume that it's somebody new, it's not existing. You say, okay, look, we have Creekside, so we have an immediate source of revenue for you, operating partner, Mr., Mrs., whoever, but we also have all of these other opportunities within our master plan, and this is not all going to happen overnight, but if you were to create a coffee kiosk for the patio, it's a revenue source, and we'll have an arrangement that could go a number of ways. It could be a turnkey operation, turnkey meaning that Rossmore builds it, and they will come and they operate it, and then they maintain repairs, maintenance, general ongoing maintenance, etc. They may get some sort of a CapEx budget every year for upgrades, whatever. And for that, some percentage of their revenue comes to Rossmore. Okay? And that revenue you can do with whatever you want. Could be helping to reduce the cost of coupons. One of the slides we had mentioned, I didn't bring it up, I'm sorry, was loyalty program. And loyalty programs are very popular, as you probably know, in the restaurant industry. The more you use, the more points you get, the more rewards you get, and that helps the operator with more volume. A whole bunch of good things happen. So, in that regard, the better job the operator does, the better revenue for them, the better revenue for you, and they're not just paying a fixed base rent, which I believe is basically what you're getting now at Creekside. So again, someone that sees that vision of if I can't get the big pie right out of the gate, I can certainly do other venues in addition to Creekside, and maybe you work out some accommodation with them if they need more space. You know, maybe they could use this event kitchen to do production temporarily. They could have carts that go out to the golf course, which are not terribly expensive, while the rest of the master plan takes place. That makes sense. So, but again, the goal is what's the master plan, and then how can we gradually get to the end game at whatever point in time makes sense for everybody. Right?
Was there a part of that question about interim? No.
So what the question was, what's considered a short-term lease?
Oh, a lease, a short-term lease? In the restaurant industry, generally a short-term lease would be about 5 years with an option to renew for another 5. You know, I think if you were an operating partner, you would have, you know, pretty much, you know, a renewal or an assessment or an audit or a review after a certain period of time, you know, to make sure that you're happy with what this person is doing. But generally 5 and 5 is a pretty standard lease agreement for restaurants.
And there was a question, kind of financial, like is there any type of a reduced overhead for a food service operator on our campus?
Reduced overhead. I don't know if there would be reduced overhead necessarily, but again, you know, if you had an arrangement with an operator in a turnkey situation where, you know, basically, you know, Rossmore built the thing, you know, they would not have that capital expense, and they would not have to have, you know, paybacks and loans and stuff like that. You know, could that relate to potentially, you know, reduced menu prices because their overheads are reduced and stuff like that? I mean, those are all things that you really have to take a pencil to and see if it makes sense, right? And if that's the type of an arrangement you want to have with the operator, you know, how does this all get funded ultimately? That's all part of the RFP process. And then obviously the negotiation in terms of selecting whoever this operating partner is going to be, right?
A lot of these very specific, how would a lease look, what would the cost be, what would the partnership, what would the capital investment, all of that is really to be determined based on a number of factors that we just don't know yet. So we fully understand that the expectation is that this is a partnership, that it is an amenity, that it brings services to residents, and we know that we want to keep it as a low out-of-cost, coupon cost, but provide opportunities. So there's a lot of parameters that we'll bring into it, but a lot of very specifics we just don't know yet.
Yeah. I will say just quickly, historically, Mandy and I have done work for other retirement community scenarios and stuff like that. The food service plays a very big part in these communities in terms of, you know, value, perception of the value of a property. You know, it's a very social, very gathering place. We did a very large project for another brand called Atria Senior Living, and, you know, obviously older, more disabled, whatever, but, you know, the residents couldn't wait for the next meal because that was their whole social life. So I think, you know, food service can be a really, really great thing for the community to enhance everything else that you already have. So.
Those are pretty much all the questions, but I want to acknowledge many of the comments and questions that we kind of answered once or addressed in the presentation. People are very concerned about addressing special diets, like when we do have food options, gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, kosher. And so these are things I think that one of the great things about the study is to really understand the demand so that a partner would understand that to be successful here. That's real specific to this community, right? So we have really good information to provide. And the other thing, if you could guess of all the food groups, what do you think I got the most comment cards on? We need to start with... Yeah, so I just think to sum that, that's a good last word, right? So yeah, so we've heard you. Yeah, we know that like a coffee solution is going to be very important.
There you go.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah, not just coffee, like coffee and nosh.
Coffee
yeah.
and.
I mean, the other comment that I would make very quickly is if you find the right operator, they're going to study you and they're going to want to know what you want, and they're going to tailor their operations to satisfy your needs, because any logical person would do that, because it's only going to enhance their opportunity to take your money, right? I mean, really, that's what it's all about, okay? So, again, that's why a good local operator that knows your market, knows competition, is going to communicate with you folks and keep a food service program fresh, on trend, committed to what you folks want, would be a huge benefit to everybody, all right? So I just want to make sure I got that out there.
So next steps, we will be talking to the planning committee in March, and the board ultimately on the next phase. And we certainly look forward to continuing our work with Danny and Mandy as we move forward into the next phase of developing that RFP, request for proposals, for a partner in future operations. Things happen slow, so it will take time, but we definitely want to continue the good progress that is being made. Just one quick announcement, we do have another town hall on Monday, March 3rd for pickleball. Everybody's favorite. So please join us for that. We'll have a good discussion. Thank you both again for your presentation and valuable.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you all for coming.